This happened when I was 12. My mom had just bought me the Xbox 360 around the time the new Xbox One had come out. I was stoked, and I'd play it every day after school. One gloomy Saturday morning, I was playing GTA 5 when my mom asked me if I wanted to go to the stores with her. I was in the middle of grinding a mission Rooftop Rumble for GTA Cash, so I told her I'd like to stay home instead. She said okay, then closed the door. She seemed pretty bummed, but hey, I was a kid. I wanted to keep playing with the new Xbox. I have no siblings and my dad hasn't been in a picture for a while now. I usually get pretty freaked out when I'm home alone, especially when my mom is working late shifts, but because I was glued to the game, it didn't even occur to me that I was the only one home. Now, my house isn't exactly old. It was built around 2006, has 2 rooms, a sizable living room and a kitchen, and a small backyard, so it definitely wasn't a big home either. The thing is, over the last couple of years, I'd occasionally hear unexplainable sounds at any time of the day. The sounds range from random knocks on the walls, to one of the doors opening or closing softly, to even hearing faint voices. In the rare chance that I'd hear one of these, I'd always make some form of excuse in order to ease my mind. Maybe it was the wind, or I'm sure it's just the house settling. The events that unfolded that dark Saturday morning though, I still cannot find an explanation for it. While I was in the middle of a neck-to-neck race, I heard soft footsteps that were dragging on the carpet just outside my door, as if someone was walking without lifting their feet with each step they took. I heard it stop behind my door. This was when I realized that I'm absolutely home alone, and the feeling of fear took over. I didn't have a phone at the time, and the house phone was in the kitchen, but I was too scared to walk out there to try and call my mom. My mom also has her phone number written on a piece of paper stuck on the fridge, in case of emergencies. I just sat there looking at the door, waiting for something else to happen. 5 minutes went by and there was no other sound. My room opens up to the living room, which is right next to the kitchen, so I finally decided to open my door and race past my living room to get to the kitchen and grab the phone. As I was about to reach the phone, I heard a very faint hello behind me. I turned around fast, but saw no one. I was quietly looking around the living room and the kitchen when I heard hello again, this time coming from my room. For some reason, I had the strongest urge to go and investigate my room, which was odd because I'm a scaredy cat. I would have been out of the house after the first hello. I walked into my room, walked past the doorway and said, "Hello?" No response. Right when I was about to say hello again, I heard a voice coming from under my bed. I didn't make out what was said, but it sent chills down my spine. I was frozen in fear and couldn't move. I kept staring at my bed, expecting a pale hand to pop out from under and wave at me to walk towards it. This was whispered right into my left ear. I finally ran out of my room, grabbed the house phone and snatched a paper that had my mom's number on it. I ran as fast as I could out of the house onto the front lawn. I was gasping for air by the time my mom picked up the phone and I explained everything that happened and that there was a possibility that someone has broken into the house. She told me to wait by the lamppost a few houses down until she got there and to call the police. She arrived about 10 minutes later and hugged me. The cops came pretty quickly and searched the whole house, even checking under my bed a few times. They found no one and there wasn't any evidence of a break-in. The police told us the house is safe and that if someone had broken in, they were most likely gone by now. We felt pretty nervous to go back, but did anyway. I didn't sleep in my room for the next couple of weeks. Once I went back into my room, I rearranged my bed and moved it closer to the door, just to keep my mind at ease that there truly wasn't anyone under there. We lived in that house for about 4 more years until we moved. Nothing else had ever happened around the house after that incident. One thing that I haven't gotten over though was the fact that the last hello that was whispered into my ear sounded just like me. When I was in college, I was a huge party goer. I'd attend any party that I can with my friends, well call Sally and Molly. This one particular day, there was a house party going on a couple of streets away from campus, hosted by some football player from my school. Sally and Molly, who live off campus about 20 minutes away, met up in my dorm and from there we walked to the house, since it was only a 15-minute walk. Once we got there, we partied until about 1 a.m. By this time, we decided to call it quits and head home. Sally and Molly were completely drunk, but I was just buzzed because I had an exam the next day. When we walked to the front of the house, my friends decided to call an Uber since they live about 30 minutes away by car. They asked if I wanted a ride as well, but I declined since campus is only a 15-minute walk. Plus, I was pretty short on cash, so I thought I'd save some money. Sally offered to pay for me, but again I declined. In hindsight, I should have accepted the offer, but I'm the kind of person who doesn't like to be in debt with my friends. I know, it's dumb, but that's just my way of thinking. Once my friend's Uber arrived, I wished them a safe drive home and began walking out of the neighborhood to campus. It was a clear summer night, with a slight warm breeze singing against the pine trees. I was still buzzed, so the night felt pretty magical and nostalgic to me. I'd stop and take in the warm summer breeze. Little did I know that my vibey night would take a dark turn. About 8 minutes into my walk, I noticed a figure about 6 houses ahead of me, standing underneath a streetlight facing away from me. I paused and just stared at the figure. They wore dark clothing and stood absolutely still. I noticed that they were wearing a black hoodie with their hood on. The person also had their hands in the hoodie's pocket. I thought it was odd because it was a pretty warm night. I felt a bit concerned, so I walked across the street to the other sidewalk, all while keeping an eye on the figure. Once I reached the sidewalk, I looked behind me to see if there was anyone else, just in case it was some form of abduction trap. I probably only looked away for about 3 seconds. When I looked back at the figure, it was now on my side of the sidewalk, still facing away from me. I don't know how this person managed to cross the street this fast without making any sound. At this point, a chill went down my spine and I decided to start walking back towards the party. I was speed walking for about 2 minutes when I looked back to see if the figure was following me, and that's when my stomach dropped. The hooded figure was about the same distance away from me, still facing the other way. I walked even faster, and every time I turned around, the figure was exactly the same distance away from me. That's when I realized that I never saw this person move. It's as if they anticipated every time I was going to look back at them. Finally, when I took a quick glance behind me, I caught the figure in the middle of ceasing their movement, again still facing the other way. I had enough and yelled, "Nice prank, can you please leave me the fuck alone?" That's when the person finally turned around and what I saw horrified me. This person had no face, no eyes, nose or mouth, just smooth skin. The thing suddenly began to run towards me. I ran as fast as I could, my heart pounding in fear. As I was about 4 minutes away from the party, I heard its footsteps slowly getting closer and closer. Once the house came into view, the footsteps suddenly ceased. I didn't bother turning around and kept running until I reached the front of the door. People from the party were looking at me like I was some crazy person, but I didn't bother to try and explain what just happened because I was trying to catch my breath and trying my best not to throw up. Once I was able to calm down, I called my friends in our group chat so that they could both pick up. They had both just arrived home, and I explained to them what I encountered. At first, they thought I was trying to prank them, but they noticed the shakiness in my voice and how I couldn't calm down. Sally kindly offered to pay for an Uber to pick me up and drive me home. This time, I did not decline her offer. During the drive home, I kept my eyes out the window to see if I could spot the faceless figure again, but saw nothing. I made it back to the dorm safely, and I ended up sleeping with the lights on for that night. This encounter really shook me to my core, and I'm never going to walk back to campus at night again, even if it's a short walk. In my teens and early 20s, my best friend and I used to have a lot of sleepovers. His mom worked a night shift as a nurse, and his little brother usually stayed in his room and went to bed early, so we had the house for ourselves. We'd cook and eat dinner together, watch TV, and especially talk a lot. We also had a tradition that we called night walks. Always around 11 p.m. or midnight, we'd leave the house and go for a long walk, 2 to 3 hours. It was especially nice in the summer because the air was warm, but there was a coolish breeze and the fields smelled amazing. There was one particular route we walked very often. Towards the end of it, there was a big forest that we had to cross, and when we emerged from it, we were on a hill that overlooked the city. There was a bench, and sometimes we sat down to enjoy the silence, the distant lights, and to relax a bit before going downhill and walk home again. One time we did exactly this. Walking through the forest was always a bit scary in the middle of the night, so once we got out, my friend suggested we rest on a bench for a few minutes. We left the trail and walked 20 meters across the meadow and finally got to the bench. The bench was located in a place where it was surrounded by trees and bushes, except in the front where you had a great view. We sat there for maybe 20 to 25 minutes, had a smoke, and just talked about random stuff like space and philosophy. At one point, my friend remarked that it was getting cold because this happened in late fall, October or November, so we decided to get going and walk home again. When we were almost back on trail, my friend asked me if I had brought the lighter. I told him that I thought he had picked it up. We turned around and went back to the bench. For a while, we just kind of touched around the wooden surface but couldn't find it. Since this spot was mostly surrounded by trees, it was very dark. My friend took out his phone and turned on the flashlight to find a lighter. He waved the flashlight around, and that's when we saw him. There was a guy sitting right behind a bench, like maybe 2 meters, around 6 feet. He was completely dressed in black and sat there, motionless, on a cold, wet ground, just staring at us. We hadn't heard any noise, which means he must have sat there the entire time while we were sitting on the bench, just staring at the back of our heads. That alone is super creepy to think about still to this day. Of course, my friend and I both got really startled, and my friend said something like, "Holy shit, man, you almost gave us a heart attack. What the hell are you doing there?" But the guy didn't respond. For a while, we just stared at him confused, and he stared back at us. Then I asked, "Why are you sitting on the ground?" No response. My friend asked, "Are you alright?" Still, no response. It was a very surreal situation, but something about it didn't feel good. I can't say what, but something about the guy gave me a really bad feeling in my stomach. My friend later told me that he felt the same way. Suddenly, the guy got up and began walking towards us. I said, "What are you doing?" And now the guy answered, but all he said was, "Yeah." As he walked around the bench to come towards us, I felt my friend's hand grab my coat and pulled me backwards. He quietly said, "Let's get the fuck out of here, man." We walked a few steps backwards because we didn't want to turn our backs on the guy. Then we turned around, ran back to the trail another 100 meters. When we turned around, we were relieved to see the guy hadn't come after us, but we still walked home as quickly as possible. To this day, I don't know why the hell the guy was sitting there, who he was, why he was silently staring at us for almost half an hour, what he planned to do when he got up and walked towards us, etc. All I can say is that my gut feeling tells me it was the right decision to run away rather than to wait and find out.